There is a process happening in your body right now that almost no one has explained to you. It is not a disease, it is not an injury, it does not cause pain, it has no obvious symptoms. It is called inflammaging, inflam aging. The word was coined in the year 2000 by an Italian researcher named Claudio Franceschi, who was studying what happened to the immune system as people grew older. What he found was that aging is not simply a slowing down, it is also a smoldering up. As we age, the immune system begins producing low levels of inflammatory compounds continuously, chronically, even when there is no infection to fight and no injury to heal. And one of the most direct consequences of that slow, silent fire is that it begins breaking down your muscle tissue. If you are over 60 and you feel weaker than you used to, if your joints ache more than the x rays seem to explain, if you are tired in a way that sleep does not fully fix chronic low grade inflammation, may be part of the reason. And what you eat has a direct, measurable effect on how much of it is circulating in your body. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly how inflammaging works and why it accelerates muscle loss, which specific foods drive inflammation higher, and which foods the research consistently links to lower levels of the inflammatory markers that do the most damage after 60. To understand why this matters so urgently for your muscles, you need to know what is actually happening at the cellular level. Your immune system produces signaling proteins called cytokines. In normal circumstances, cytokines are your body's emergency alert system. They tell surrounding tissue that there is an infection or injury nearby and trigger the repair response. Two of the most studied pro-inflammatory cytokines are interleukin 6 IL-6 and tumor necrosis factor alpha TNF. In a healthy acute immune response, these compounds appear briefly, do their job, and subside. In inflammaging, they are chronically elevated, not dramatically, not at the levels you see in infection or autoimmune disease, but persistently, at a low simmer, year after year. And research published in Frontiers in Pharmacology in 2026 confirmed what multiple prior studies had found. Elevated TNF and IL-6 directly drive muscle protein breakdown and impair the muscle regeneration process. In plain English, the same inflammation that was meant to protect you is quietly degrading your muscle tissue from within. This is why sarcopenia, the age-related loss of muscle mass and strength we covered in episode 4, is not just about aging. It is also about inflammation. And inflammation is something you can directly influence with every meal. Here is the part that changes everything. Specific whole foods have been shown to measurably reduce CRP, IL-6, and TNF, the same inflammatory markers that drive muscle breakdown and joint pain after 60. A 2026 clinical review found that anti-inflammatory dietary patterns can reduce these biomarkers within 4 to 8 weeks of consistent adoption. Not months, not years, 4 to 8 weeks. Before I show you exactly which foods it helps, to understand what is driving your inflammation higher right now. Because knowing the accelerators makes the solution make more sense. The Western diet pattern high in refined carbohydrates, processed seed oils, ultra-processed foods, and added sugar is consistently associated with elevated inflammatory markers. Refined seed oils like soybean oil, corn oil, and sunflower oil are extremely high in omega-6 fatty acids. Omega-6 fatty acids are not harmful in themselves, your body needs them. But the ratio between omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids matters enormously. The optimal ratio is roughly 2 to 4 parts omega-6 to 1 part omega-3. The typical Western diet delivers a ratio of around 15 to 1. That imbalance, not the omega 6 itself, but the imbalance promotes a pro inflammatory state in the body. Ultra processed foods, refined sugar, and white flour products spike blood glucose rapidly, which triggers inflammatory pathways and keeps CARP-C reactive protein, the most commonly measured marker of systemic inflammation, chronically elevated. Before I walk you through the specific foods, this is for educational purposes only. If you have a diagnosed inflammatory condition, autoimmune disease, or are taking medication for inflammation, please speak with your doctor or dietitian about dietary changes. What follows is consistent with current mainstream nutrition science, but your individual health situation always matters. The most powerful single dietary change for reducing inflammation after 60 is increasing omega 3 fatty acids from whole food sources. Fatty fish, salmon, sardines, mackerel, herring are the richest dietary source of long chain omega 3 fatty acids, specifically EPA and DA. A 2025 randomized controlled trial published in the journal Nutrients found that supplementing with omega 3 fatty acids significantly reduced the inflammatory score in older participants, and the beneficial effect was more pronounced in participants with a more pro inflammatory baseline diet. In practical terms, if your diet has been high in processed food, adding fatty fish produces an even stronger anti inflammatory effect than it would for someone already eating well. The current evidence supports eating fatty fish at least twice a week. A portion of canned sardines or tinned salmon counts. These are among the most affordable sources of omega 3 available. The second category is colorful fruits and vegetables, specifically the ones with the deepest, richest color. Blueberries, strawberries, cherries, red grapes, spinach, kale, red cabbage, purple carrots. The pigments that give these foods their color compounds called anthocyanins, quercetin, and other polyphenols are among the most studied anti-inflammatory compounds in food. A 2024 narrative review published in the journal Nutrients identified berries and leafy greens as two of the key food groups with the strongest evidence for anti-inflammatory and neuroprotective effects. The same berries we covered in episode 8 for brain health are doing double duty here, protecting both cognition and muscle tissue through the same anti-inflammatory pathway. Half a cup of berries most days is the target. Extra virgin olive oil contains a compound called oleocanthal, which researchers have found inhibits the same inflammatory enzymes as ibuprofen, the over the counter pain medication we covered in episode 6. Unlike ibuprofen, olive oil does not carry the kidney risks or the blood pressure interaction we discussed for people on ACE inhibitors and diuretics. The Mediterranean diet, which uses olive oil as its primary fat, is the most consistently studied anti-inflammatory dietary pattern in the world. Using 2 to 3 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil daily in place of butter or refined seed oils is one of the highest impact and lowest effort dietary changes available to anyone over 60. Walnuts specifically, not all nuts equally, are among the plant foods with the highest omega 3 content. A small handful of walnuts provides a meaningful amount of the plant based omega 3 called ALA alongside polyphenols and vitamin E that independently support anti inflammatory pathways. Research consistently identifies walnuts as the nut with the strongest anti inflammatory evidence base. A small handful, 3 to 5 times a week, is the practical target. Let me pause here because there is something important I want you to take in. We have now covered 4 distinct food groups with anti-inflammatory evidence: fatty fish, berries and dark produce, olive oil, Walnuts, every single one of these foods also appeared in the Mind Diet, which we covered in episode 8 for brain health. And most of them appear in the Blue Zones eating patterns we covered in episode 11. This is not a coincidence. The same foods that protect your brain also reduce the inflammation that degrades your muscles. The same foods that are associated with living longer are the ones that keep the internal fire at a low enough level that your body can continue building and maintaining tissue. There is no separate diet for every separate problem. There is one dietary direction that the research keeps returning to. One more food worth knowing about. Turmeric contains a compound called curcumin, which has been studied extensively for its anti-inflammatory effects. The challenge is that curcumin on its own is poorly absorbed. But research has found that combining it with piperine, the active compound in black pepper, increases curcumin absorption by up to 2000%. Adding turmeric and a grind of black pepper to soups, eggs, roasted vegetables, or a warm drink in the evening is a practical, well supported, and genuinely low effort addition for anyone whose joints and muscles are carrying more inflammation than they should. This is a food, not a supplement. The spice rack version works. Here is the one sentence that matters most from this video. After 60, your body produces a chronic low-grade inflammation called inflammaging that directly breaks down muscle tissue, and a consistent dietary pattern rich in fatty fish, berries, olive oil, walnuts, and turmeric with black pepper can measurably reduce the inflammatory markers responsible within 4 to 8 weeks. The practical starting point is 3 changes. Replace refined seed oils with extra virgin olive oil as your primary cooking fat. Add fatty fish, at least twice a week. Tinned salmon or sardines are fine. Add half a cup of berries and a small handful of walnuts to your week. These are not extreme measures. They are the opposite of extreme. They are the dietary foundation that virtually every longevity researcher and anti-aging nutritionist in the world agrees on. Your inflammation is not fixed. It responds to what you feed it. That is what this channel is here for every week. Not fear, not supplements, not protocols, just the specific verified food information that gives your body its best chance. If this helped you today, subscribe. Every week, I bring you one thing that makes your good health decisions even better. Before you go, 12 videos, 12 things most seniors never heard. Next week, I am covering something that affects how your gut bacteria interact with your brain, a connection so new that most doctors trained even a decade ago were not taught it in medical school. And the food that most powerfully supports this connection is something most seniors either gave up years ago or never really understood the point of. It is not a supplement. It is not a probiotic pill. It is a category of food that has been fermented for thousands of years by every culture on earth. That is next week. Don't miss it.